They clutched her arm before she got a word out. "First class only in this section," the agent barked, loud enough to echo across half the gate area. She didn't protest. She simply handed over her boarding pass, seat 1A, fully confirmed, plain as day. He barely glanced at it, already gesturing for security to come over. Within moments, this black woman was escorted away in total silence, treated like some criminal, while the white passenger behind her breezed on through without the slightest pause. But what nobody at that gate realized, not the staff, not the onlookers, not even the smug supervisor who gave the order, was that the woman they just tried to embarrass wasn't some random passenger. She controlled more of their future than their own CEO ever would. And their downfall was already underway. Think this is just another case of discrimination? Pay close attention. This isn't really about a boarding pass. It's about who truly holds the power. How would you respond in her situation? Drop a comment below and let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you agree that some lines must never be crossed, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because you will not believe how this ends. It started on a morning that usually promises smooth efficiency. 6:15 a.m., crisp air outside LaGuardia, the soft glow of fluorescent lights over a terminal still waking up. Business travelers glided through Terminal C like clockwork, tugging sleek luggage, wearing tailored coats and polished shoes. Among them was Danielle Monroe, dressed in classic black, a fitted wool coat, and carrying a slim briefcase. She moved with quiet focus. Her flight to Zurich was set for 8:10, and after traversing more time zones than most airport crews, the routine of check-ins and security lines had lost its novelty. Airports were just corridors of ID checks, scanning machines, and barcoded passes for Danielle. But something felt off from the second she reached the first-class counter. The agent behind the kiosk never said good morning, never asked for her ID. He just gave her a dismissive look, clocked her skin color, and motioned to the left. "Economy check-in is over there?" Danielle paused, not sure she'd heard right. "I'm flying first class," she said evenly, lifting her phone to show the pass for Zurich. The agent didn't bother to look at it. He kept his arm extended toward the economy lanes, eyes already shifting to the next person. "Left side, ma'am." She stood her ground, calmly repeating, "This is my lane." Her tone wasn't confrontational, just matter-of-fact. The man's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside." Danielle said nothing more. She just moved back and walked around to a separate premium kiosk. There, a second agent scanned her pass, at last, and said, "Wow, 1A's a prime seat." No apology for the hassle, no recognition that she'd just been brushed off as if she didn't belong. Danielle took the ticket and headed for security. At the TSA lines, she split off to the right for pre-check, but the agent doing the scans paused. "You've been randomly chosen for standard screening," he told her. Danielle noticed a green light flashing on the scanner that said she was good to go. Why the extra search? She looked over her shoulder. A white woman passed through next, no extra check, no stop. Another passenger, same easy pass. Next, a guy in a sports cap, also no random screening. But Danielle was directed to the slower general line. After that, an agent rummaged through her carry-on like he had all the time in the world, sliding out her tablet, charger, and 2 sealed folders labeled Horizon Capital, Confidential. He flipped through one folder with his bare hands. "So, finance?" he asked in a too casual tone. She offered nothing. "You carry a lot of paper for someone with a tablet," he went on. Danielle deadpanned. "I handle things most people don't see." He cracked a sarcastic half-smile. "Sure you do." A supervisor drifted by, barely glancing in their direction. A fellow traveler watched with mild curiosity but didn't speak up. Danielle repacked her items, sealed them up, and walked out without another word. She took the elevator to the first-class lounge. A sign overhead said, Haven Air First Class Plus Platinum Members Only. She tapped her pass on the reader. The screen blinked red. The lounge attendant checked Danielle's ticket, frowned, and said, It says you're not cleared for lounge access. Danielle calmly replied, Run it again. The attendant only repeated that the system showed her as ineligible. Finally, after Danielle displayed the digital purchase receipt, the woman sighed about some glitch and did a manual override. No apology. Nothing. Danielle settled into the lounge, sipping water in a quiet corner, bracing for whatever else might happen. She'd passed through some of the most high-security airports around the globe, but the real friction usually came back home. She could sense it simmering now. When Danielle returned to the gate, something else was wrong. The door was shut. Her name was no longer on the screen. It wasn't that she'd missed the flight. It was that the flight had apparently dropped her. She moved to a self-service kiosk, punched in her details, and out came a new boarding pass. Seat 32B, middle seat in economy. The kiosk insisted that was her new assignment. Her blood ran cold. She tried to reselect first class, but the kiosk refused. She scanned the seating chart. A back row seat between the restrooms, usually left empty unless the airline's overbooked. She stormed over to the gate desk to ask for a supervisor. Another agent typed away and rattled off some nonsense about their limited override system after the manifest was locked. Unlock it, Danielle said, so controlled it was practically a hiss. The agent handed her a scribbled receipt slip with a guest relations number. You can submit a formal complaint, she offered, eyes refusing to meet Danielle's. Danielle let the scrap fall from her hand. I'm not calling anyone. Fix it here. But the agent just stared blankly. Fed up, Danielle made for the lounge again. This time the door beeped red. The new pass read, Main Cabin, so she wasn't allowed in. The staff insisted it had updated 15 minutes ago. Meanwhile, Danielle's specialized meal, grilled veggies and lemon rice for her autoimmune dietary restrictions, had vanished from the system too. Someone else had already claimed the dish as a vegan keto request. Each privilege she'd paid for, seat, meal, lounge access, disappeared in little increments. Then they came for her carry-on, claiming size regulations as an excuse. Next thing she knew, a security officer told her it was being shipped to the cargo hold, or maybe claims, or maybe rerouted. They couldn't keep their story straight. She tried to track it down, only to be met with shrugs. No tag, no info, they told her. She realized they weren't just inconveniencing her, they were making her vanish from the system altogether. And it didn't stop there. A staffer wanted to examine her platinum wristwatch, hinting it might be counterfeit. They demanded proof of authenticity, insinuating she had stolen it. She shot them down so firmly they backed off, but they kept scribbling notes in their system. The tension built like static in the air. Any moment, an even bigger confrontation could spark. By the time she circled back to gate C12, she was being flagged. Her previously minted seat was nowhere to be found, replaced by a standby note. Passengers in suits or strollers shuffled on board without issue, while security and staff gave Danielle side eyes, as if she were the problem. She realized some sort of code must have been attached to her profile, turning her from a valid customer to a disruption. It was a quiet kind of hostility. No one said it out loud, but she felt the label settle on her like a heavy cloak. And there stood Trent Maxwell, the original gate agent who'd brushed her off, arms folded, smirking like he'd won some private game. When her eyes locked on his, he stared right through her, as if daring her to fight back. The message was clear. He considered her done, but Danielle wasn't going anywhere. Her phone buzzed, a name flashing on the screen that changed everything. She answered calmly, voice quiet. "It's time," she said. The reply came quickly on the other end. She repeated, "Yes, it's time. Full withdrawal. Sovereign fund. Domestic holdings. Effective immediately." Then she ended the call with no fanfare. Suddenly the cogs began to turn behind the scenes. Big, ruthless cogs that folks like Trent couldn't even begin to imagine. Even as Trent gave orders to keep Danielle sidelined, she'd already set off a chain reaction above his pay grade. In a corner office near Gate D6, a small group of Haven Air managers began to congregate, scanning their phones with nervous glances. Something was amiss. Urgent calls, hurried texts, references to priority investors, and sudden capital shifts. Over in the distance, Danielle sat near the windows, shoulders relaxed, her phone silent now. She no longer needed to scramble for solutions. The wheels were already in motion. A fresh message arrived on her screen. Initiated contracts withdrawn. Estimated financial loss $615 million over 5 fiscal quarters. Westbrook notified. Response pending. She locked her phone again, her composure unflinching. Westbrook was Leonard Westbrook, VP of International Operations. Danielle had met him once at a summit on trade and ethics. He hadn't seemed cruel or arrogant, just detached. She doubted he had a clue about the ugliness thriving under him, but that no longer mattered. He had the power to fix this, or watch the entire airline topple under the weight of her evidence. The moment she placed a manila folder on a nearby help desk, the tension crackled. "Deliver this to Leonard Westbrook," she said in a tone that offered no room for questions. "It contains 3 months of undisclosed internal audits at 5 major U.S. hubs, each packed with staff IDs, passenger complaints, and digital logs. If he doesn't acknowledge receipt in 15 minutes, it all goes public." The startled woman behind the desk didn't argue. She grabbed the folder and disappeared behind a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Moments later, through a glass partition, Danielle could see suited executives in a tense huddle. They talked too fast, arms raised in frantic gestures. She recognized the signs of a system on the verge of implosion. Trent, oblivious to the storm overhead, carried on as if nothing had changed. He directed staff to shuffle passenger manifests and re-verify seats he'd already snatched away. But Danielle spotted the faint shift in his posture, a quicker breath, the need to repeat orders. He felt something slipping, though he couldn't pinpoint why. Then came the call to his radio earpiece. "Maxwell, Concourse Ops requests your presence in boardroom B. Immediately." Trent went pale at the sharp tone. No more breezy confidence. A co-worker, seeing his uneasy expression, asked if everything was okay. "Just a quick check-in," he lied, trying to play it cool. "Cover for me." He strode off toward a corridor marked "Restricted," trying not to show how badly his hands were shaking. Behind that frosted glass door was boardroom B, usually left empty unless there was an active crisis. A bomb threat, a security breach, or in this case, the catastrophic fallout from targeting the wrong passenger. Inside waited 2 regional directors, an attorney from corporate, and a folder labeled "Confidential, Monroe Investigation Files." They wasted no time on pleasantries. The woman leading the group flipped open a page and held it out so Trent could see. "Do you know who Danielle Monroe is?" Trent scoffed. "A passenger who made a fuss for no reason. Nothing we can't handle." He didn't even finish the sentence. A second director leaned forward, voice like ice. "She's not just a passenger. She's our primary investor through multiple institutional contracts. Voting shares via Horizon Equity. Veto rights through Nexus Strategic. She pulled $600 million in capital support 15 minutes ago. We have a domino effect hitting the DOT, the FDC, and every international partner board we rely on. We're already fielding press calls. The first director locked eyes with him. And apparently you gave them all the ammo they needed. Video evidence, witness statements. There's a detailed pattern of discriminatory reassignments linked to your login credentials. 24 other cases flagged with the exact same codes. We have it all documented. You created a digital trail. Trent could hardly breathe. I was following protocol, he managed weakly. Not protocol, the director corrected coldly. Bias, systemic habitual bias, and now we get to pay the price. The legal team has offered you a choice. She slid a white envelope across the table. Your immediate resignation with a full liability waiver, or your name goes public in an official statement, along with everything we've discovered. Trent looked like a cornered animal, trapped and panicked, his complexion sallow beneath the fluorescent lights. This is insane, he blurted. 30 minutes, came the reply, and with that, the director stood and walked out, leaving him alone with the ultimatum ticking on the digital wall clock. Meanwhile, beyond that frosted glass, the terminal rattled with fresh chaos. Overhead announcements buzzed with delays and cancellations. Screens flickered from green to red. By the time people realized Orion Air International was halting flights for administrative evaluation, panic spread. Phones lit up with frantic messages. Agents huddled, confused. Danielle watched from her seat near the gate. She didn't fidget or pace. She just stayed still, letting the unraveling happen. On the opposite side of the glass, executives raced in and out of a small office. She could guess the calls they were making, likely to U.S. regulators, foreign partners, attorneys, and crisis PR teams. But there was no quick patch-up for a meltdown at this scale. In a downtown Washington, D.C. office, the Department of Transportation faxed a formal termination notice for a $2.1 billion contract with Orion Air. It cited civil rights violations and discrimination complaints, exactly what Danielle's evidence had exposed. That single document pulled the financial rug out from under the airline's long-term stability. Within a day, Orion's stock fell almost 20%. Hemorrhaging nearly $1 billion in shareholder value. All because of one woman they'd tried to push aside, confident she'd never push back. In a sterile press conference room inside Orion's headquarters, the CEO, Bryce Hammond, stood at a single mic with no fancy backdrop. His pallor spoke volumes as he read from a statement, voice tight. We prioritized scale over ethics, and assumed the system would self-correct. We were wrong. We're halting operations for a full structural overhaul, beginning with leadership resignations and an external audit of every one of our procedures. We will release data, not just statements, and we will listen. Then he lifted his gaze to the camera lens, as if addressing Danielle directly. To Ms. Danielle Monroe, on behalf of this institution and all the harm it caused, I won't offer excuses, only recognition that your refusal to vanish has forced us to change, and that it matters. It truly matters. When the camera cut, there were no follow-up questions, no applause, just the hollow hush of a company staring into its own wreckage. At LaGuardia, Danielle checked her phone one more time. There it was. A confirmation that her capital divestments had been fully executed. Her legal team would forward everything to congressional oversight. 5 major news outlets clamored for interviews. She gave them nothing. She wasn't seeking publicity. She wanted accountability. She gathered her newly delivered replacement carry-on, the old one had been lost in the chaos, and headed for Gate D1, where another airline, one unconnected to Orion, was boarding for Geneva. A young black woman checking boarding passes glanced up. Her gaze flickered with recognition. She smiled, voice soft. I saw what happened to you earlier. I work in flight systems. I just wanted you to know I'm staying. Because of what you did. Danielle offered a nod. No speech, no pep talk. There was no need. They boarded side by side. Months later, as the industry reeled, new measures were put in place. Audits, anti-discrimination clauses with teeth, TSA checks linked to third-party oversight. Orion Air restarted operations under a new brand motto, clear skies, clear conscience. But their prestige was shattered. They learned the hard way that silence cuts both ways. When the right person stops staying quiet, a single boarding pass can topple an empire. Danielle flew on, never using Orion again. She didn't need to. She'd changed the game without ever raising her voice. If this story struck a chord or made you reconsider what real power looks like, subscribe for more compelling insights into injustice and moments of true transformation. Which scene hit you the hardest and why? Drop your thoughts below and let us know where in the world you're reading from.